What was your "I don't get paid enough for this" moment at work? I work in retail at a shoe store. So my job is already so low paying, but I do my job well, and my manager loves me for good reason. Two of my coworkers and I are behind the counter just hanging because there aren't any customers in the store. This guy walks into the store and straight to the counter, points at me, and demands that I help him. So I do. I'm a little annoyed, but I'm still very retail nice to him. He threw shoes around when they didn't fit him right. He made me fill out his order again because I didn't capitalize the first letters of his name, which made him go on a rant about the origin of his name and heritage. He lectured me for not asking for his name when he walked through the door. He felt very entitled and was really condescending about everything. But I gritted my teeth, smiled and even laughed at his jokes. The next time he came into the store, he finds help from another coworker and complained to her about me, deliberately lying about the whole experience. He claimed I yelled at him the whole time and tells her she shouldn't be in this business if that's how she's gonna act. Yeah dude. Because selling shoes is so my passion, I get paid enough to help people buy shoes, not to kiss their feet. I learned a lot about people during my time of retail work. I coined an expression about people's true colors retail really reveals. I once worked for a company that specialized in the care for developmentally disabled people as a direct service provider, but we are often called staff. We worked in ISLs, or commonly seen as a group homes. I was paid $9 hourly, working 12-hour shifts on the weekends, sometimes longer. The first house I ever worked in had 4 people. 2 of them were in diapers, couldn't speak, and had the intelligence of toddlers. The other 2 needed moderate support. My co-worker was sick, so I had replacement PRN working with me. One of the non-speaking residents had a diarrhea blowout. They got up out of bed, down the hallway, across the living room, and into the kitchen, leaving a long clumpy trail of human waste behind them. What naturally happened? My co-worker hid in a reclining chair under a blanket in the living room, while I had to coax a screaming adult toddler into their sit-in shower, constantly redirect the other residents away as they want my attention every 2 seconds, all while I'm bleaching and wiping up clumps of human feces off the hardwood floor throughout the entire house. It stank particularly bad that day too. My co-worker did not help. She did nothing as I had to clean the house, bathe the resident who had the blowout, and then cook them lunch. Looking back on it, I should forced her to help me, never making that same mistake again. My boss insisted that everybody be at their desks at 8:30 sharp. She made me take roll on an attendance sheet and hand it into her every day. She also made me do it at lunchtime when everybody left and came back, and when they left at night. Took roll for a bunch of adults 3 times a day. I don't work there anymore. I worked it with about 30 other developers, firefighters, supporting a large 3-shift-a-day manufacturing line. When the line computers went down, 300 workers leaned their backs against the wall, waiting for us to get the manufacturing process back up and running. We pretty much had freedom to stroll in about 10 AM. Many have worked well into the evening, often took 2-hour lunch breaks. Most of us were on 24-hour call, which earned us 1-2 days of comp time for any trip to the office at any time of the day. A new boss was appointed over us. He quickly replaced our casual work hours with strict 8 AM to 5 PM hours, with a 1-hour break for lunch. Day 1 of his new policy, we were working on a failed mid-range computer on the manufacturing line, 300 workers hanging out watching us. Oops. It's 5 o'clock. Quitting time for us. New boss caught us in the parking lot just heading to the local bar and swiftly changed his new policy back to our standard. I work at the busiest McDonald's in the county, and on Sundays it's an absolute hellhole due to the church rush. For a while, they had been scheduling me and this other guy to deal with it by ourselves around 8:00-10:00 point. So basically, we had to cook lots of burgers, nuggets, tenders, etc., and still make hundreds of sandwiches at the same time. We were both really fast, so I guess that's why they did that to us, but it really made me want to die tbh. McDonald's and church rush in the same sentence gives me an insane amount of anxiety. The Sunday church rush is horrible at any McDonald's. The one I worked at had the pleasure of being located near 5 churches on the same road. I found church people to be the rudest and most impatient people to deal with. They've actually caused people at my location to quit because of how insane they get when their Egg McMuffin is a little burnt, or that we were taking too long when we had 10 plus orders on the screen for drive-thru, 20 plus for dining room, and the maximum that anyone would wait on things was maybe 5 minutes. We would have a minimum of 14 people working on Sundays during the day shift. Worked at a fast food place about 13 years ago. This lady in the drive-thru claimed she was missing a sandwich. Our policy was to ask for the bags back to verify. I asked to see the bags 3 or 4, decent sized order, and instead of handing them back like a civilized human being, she instantly started raging and throwing the food into the window while cussing me out. Guess what one of the items that she threw at me was? Yep, said missing sandwich. The McDonald's near my old place had the opposite policy. We got food for 8 big hungry guys after a 3-hour gym session. We get home, and it is only about half there. 3 big bags, that's why we thought it was all of it. 2 of us drive back to talk to someone, and they are like, oh, so that's the order these items were missing from. We are so sorry. Then they made us an entire new order. I even said we don't need everything made again, just the stuff we were missing. But sure enough, we got to keep the original half order and the entire new order. We walked out with around 50 burgers. Original order was more than 32 burgers. We invited our neighbors over to eat with us. So many at my old job. Here's a couple having to explain to a coworker how the comment he made was racist and upset one of our students. Being told that people don't do work because they know I'll step in and do it to make sure it gets done as manager. That was my job. Spending 5 to 6 hours cleaning up everyone else's messes before starting my own work. Telling the PhDs I was working with how to do simple things. But my biggest one was just before I left. I typed up the ad for my replacement. I included only about 3-4 of my actual duties. Hours, kicked it back and said as written the person performing those duties was mandated a salary of low 6 figures. I was making 30k. Oh man, I know that feeling. My last place gave me a 2% raise. After I left, they had to hire 6 people to replace me. Could have cost them a lot less to just give me a reasonable increase. The new guy still mystifies as to how I got so much done in a year. I work in security, and a bit under a year ago, I worked at some kind of public TV event. My job was to keep people without passes out of a specific area, which was intended for those working behind the scenes to kick back and relax and get their lunches and all that. Anyway, only ones I was allowed entrance were people with passes and other security folks. But then word from above came that the exception was to be made for some kind of supposedly famous child music group. I had no clue what they looked like, so 4 kids and their parents walk up, and I stop them. Don't you know who these are? Quickly followed. Eventually it got cleared up. And every time after they kept bringing in more friends and family members and the same song and dance continued. How to get your whole family backstage with this one easy trick. Security guards hate it. I did this to Common at ACL. Do you know who I am? Nope. Where's your pass? Posted before this. This was back in the late 90s. I was working at Walmart as my first job as a teenager. I was floated to the garden department one day and there was a guy looking at lawn fertilizer. I walked over and asked if he needs help. He said not now, just looking at the different kinds you have. Pretty standard reply from the guy, so I said okay, let me know. I walk away and then swing back about 5 minutes later. Same guy has proceeded to rip open about 10 different kinds of the fertilizer all over the ground and is rolling around in the stuff. He is also taste sampling the stuff. I called my manager because I did not want to deal with it. Security escorted the guy out the store and called an ambulance in case the ingestion of the fertilizer hurt him. Tato vertical bar sounds exactly like what someone from Walmart would do. It's scary how weird people can be. The time I went to sleep under my desk at work at 5 AM because I needed to be back at my desk for an 8 AM call. I had promised myself a long time ago that I would never sleep under my desk. I would go home or just work straight through, but I wouldn't do that. I only lived a 12-minute walk home, but that night I realized that getting those extra 24 minutes of sleep were worth not going home. I was so sad about it. I'm a corporate lawyer. We had been working literally around the clock for days on a deal. That was going sideways. This was a Wednesday, a Thursday morning, but I had been there until 3 a.m. Sunday night, 5 a.m. Monday night, 6 a.m. Tuesday night, and had been back in the office by 9 a.m. every day. That's when I knew I needed to quit, but I'm still here a year and change later. Oops. That schedule sounds crazy. Do you still work those insane hours now? My mother was moving interstate with my father, and it was the last time I'd see either of my parents for months. I was 18 and just graduated school. I explained this to my boss, but he just said I would have to see her another time, because he needed a fence put up over the weekend. I told him I was leaving either way and he could put his own fence up. I quit soon after that. He also accused me of lying and berated me multiple times for random things that I either didn't do and refusing to pay me for weeks at a time. Sound like it was a good thing you got out of there. I ended getting a doctor to write a letter citing mental health as the reason for leaving, and my boss just sent me a message telling me I didn't care about his family or my job. He then didn't pay me my final payment for almost a month and only paid it because I threatened legal action. Still got about half of what I was owed, but I was just happy to leave it there and move on. My first job didn't have a garbage compactor, so they chose me to jump into the recyclables dumpster and just kind of jump around to flatten discarded boxes. Why was I chosen? I was the fattest member on the team, so I was naturally qualified for the job. All for $5.25 an hour. The dumpster was located between the store and the parking lot. Everyone walking to the shop could see me. Customers looked down on me. Back in the store, people would back up when I got close because they thought I was rooting around in the garbage. It was just cardboard, but they acted like it was the plague. One day my mom pulled up the shop, saw me in the dumpster, and looked like she was going to cry because she was so embarrassed for me. After my mom, I just kind of quit. It was one thing to have customers act like I was some garbage dwelling monster, but to see my mom like that broke my heart.